Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys for showing up. Today we have a special guest. His name is Chris Lights Out Lytle. He's a UFC veteran. He's a firefighter. I mean, he did bare knuckle. He's done everything. UFC veteran. Chris Lights Out Lytle. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great. Funny from the intro, I'm figuring something out. If it has the word fighting in it, I'd like to do it, Firefighting, MMA fighting, boxing, bare knuckle fighting, like anything with fighting in it, I'm in.
Yeah, again, you've done so much throughout the whole sport of combat sports in general. I mean, again, I had to look a little bit more into, I didn't know that you did bare knuckle, but, you also were a boxer. Now, you were a boxer before UFC, right? Or was it after?
I started doing MMA first, and really, but then, when I fought a lot in Japan, I fought in a lot of organizations. I fought in the UFC once back before Zook and them bought it, and
yep,
that was a very good organization back then. So I really started going back to Japan, and that's when I really started doing pro boxing. So when I didn't really get back into UFC until after I had a lot of pro boxing. So
okay,
they kind of looked at me as a pro boxer at that point, but I was like, I started off in MMA. They didn't really realize that, but whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I remember, especially because I still have the UFC, the pay-per-views on DVD and stuff, and I'll watch it here and there. And then I remember, I think it was Joe Rogan or people are announcing, they're like, yeah, he has the boxer mentality, his stand-up's great because he was a boxer and stuff. So I didn't know if it was before or after. I know you started in '98, right?
Yeah, my first fight was in '98. So, and it's weird if you look on the records as far as whatever Sherdog or Tapology, like probably my first 15 or 20 fights aren't even on there, most of them, because they came back like, this isn't sanctioned, so they took away all those fights. I was like, man,
oh,
it
really?
just pissed me off because everyone they took off was a win. You know what I mean? They didn't take off any losses. Like everyone I lost was in a big organization. None of the big ones were a lot of the wins were on there, but it is what it is.
Well, here's another cool thing about you is that you are the only fighter, I think, that's actually gone through your whole career without getting knocked out and without getting stopped. The only one was the cut. I think it was with who was it? He had a cut.
Actually, it happened twice. I got
twice, right?
Once with Thiago Alves and once with Joe Riggs. And to be honest with you, I felt like I had a pretty good chance of winning both those fights. So it is, it's one thing when you're getting killed and they did, but they were both close fights. I remember the Thiago fight, it was they gave it the fight of the night, and it was after the second round they stopped. I was like, I think we each won a round. So it's like, man, both those, I think those are both good fights. And they were fun fights. It just pissed me off they had to get stopped because of a cut,
Yeah, the cut was below your eye too, right? It wasn't.
Actually, I did have one. I had two. One was kind of on the side, and one was like on my eyelid. They stopped it for the one on the eyelid. They said, I was like, dude, that's not even bleeding. I didn't care about that, but what are you going to do? You try to argue for a second. Once the doctor said it's over, I've learned there's nothing that's going to happen. You're not going to change their mind. You're not going to talk them out of it. So it is what it is. And regroup, I guess, man.
Again, if no one's seen your fights, I mean, you always showed up. You always gave it your all. And that was one thing that was really fascinating especially when I was little watching you, man, was just the way you brought your A game every time. It was never a boring Chris Lytle fight, man. It was always, again, your nickname shows it all, lights out. And I mean, it was awesome.
That's always the goal, in my opinion. After, I've had the unfortunate distinction. I've lost about 5 split decisions. And so the one thing I've learned is, I don't really care what 3 other individuals who probably have never even been in a fight say about what I did.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not going to try and go out there and win a decision. I tried that thing of once. I'm going to win a decision. I'm going to do this. And I lost a split decision. So after that, I was like, I don't care. I'm never trying that again. I'm going to try and finish everybody because that's the one thing I can control. I can control if I finish them,
Exactly.
But when it goes to a judge, it's a coin toss sometimes. So try and finish people. And if I didn't, then it was usually either a great fight and I won the fight of the night or something like that. So after I decided to quit ever trying to win decisions, my career got a lot better. I wish we'd get more people who think like that today because, just like in those 3 fights, the title fights this weekend, they all went the distance. That was a long-ass time to watch. Plus, I was like, some of these aren't what I want to see. A lot of times the prelims are better because either like a title elimination fight or the guy who has the title, they're just scared to death of losing. So they just don't put it out there a lot of times.
Yeah. Now, especially coming from there was a little bit of controversy. I mean, I could see it, especially have you seen did you see the fights this weekend?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So one of them was, yep, Max Holloway. That was one that was kind of questionable. Again, I understand, but there's a lot that goes into it, like, I still think the whole takedown thing is what gets me, like, is a takedown more than a knockdown? Because I mean, Max Holloway had him knocked him down a couple times.
Twice.
And then twice towards the end, and then he got taken down. Now, does that justify him winning the round because he took him down like that?
I mean, to me, the takedown, not necessarily at all. And what happened there, here's what went right. I disagreed with it. I thought Max Holloway did enough, especially the first 3 rounds.
Yep.
The last 2, he kind of faded a little bit, and they were pretty close, and then that takedown might have put them over the top. Mm-hmm. But that's my problem with MMA and doing like a 10-point must system like boxing. It isn't boxing. There's a huge difference if somebody kind of dominates a round or squeaks by in a round. So they need to give way more 10-8 rounds if you're going to use this scoring system. I kind of love the way they did things in Pride.
Pride was awesome.
Judge the totalitarian, like the total fight, as opposed to just round by round, and then kind of who was coming on, who was doing more action, who was trying to finish a fight. But you got to understand one thing too, in Pride and in Japan in general, they kind of have a different mentality, and it's more of it's not 100% about winning and losing, about going out there and put on a great show and trying to finish a guy and put on a great fight. And people did that, and they'd get knocked out, and they'd still have them right back because put on a great fight and you laid it on the line. They don't want people who's going to go in there and hold you down and outpoint you. This has turned into too much of an athletic contest and not a fight anymore at some level. So that's one thing. I know we talk about it, but that's one thing I love about the bare knuckle boxing, bare knuckle fighting, whatever you're going to call it, is those people haven't decided this is a sport or an athletic contest yet. It's still a fist fight. I'm going to punch this guy as hard as I can. I want to knock this guy's head off. That's what I love. It's so entertaining. And the UFC, I think, had a little more of that until more money gets involved, more titles gets involved, and then you're kind of foolish if you continue to have that behavior, which I tried to have.
Definitely. So again, I agree with you on that. The pride rules were a lot. I like the way they handled it. It's a lot better and stuff like that. And again, those are one of the question marks they had, especially going into UFC 51, was just that title. I agree with you on. I think he did win all 3 rounds. I think he did squeak enough to win to get the title, but at the same time, it's the judges are like they kind of give it to the champion. The champ.
I get that, but I mean, here's the thing too. Like I did have a little small parlay on that, and I didn't think Max Holloway was going to have it left, and I didn't pick him. I bet against him, and after the fight, I was like, well, there goes that parlay. I thought I lost it. He won. I was like, I was happy, but I don't think he deserved it. I mean, and it was a close fight and everything, but and what you said, well, did those takedowns negate the knockdowns? Not at all, because he won those 2 rounds and he had the knockdown, and even though he lost the 2 rounds with a takedown, I still think it came down to the 3rd round. I guess maybe they thought that he faded in the 3rd round. I don't really know, but it is what it is. It won me a little bit of money, so I'll take it.
Definitely. So, like we're talking about, like, your career, man. Your career. I mean, you're a veteran in the UFC. I mean, you're like one of the goats out there, right? And
thank you, kind of.
Yeah, and definitely you had some organizations, obviously, like you were talking about. You were that you worked with WEC, and then you were also Cage Rage welterweight champion, which is pretty cool. And then you were also in the Ultimate Fighter. Now, could you elaborate a little bit on each organization, which one you like the most, and then we'll just go from there, man.
Sure. Well, obviously, UFC was number one. Now, when I first started, I fought a lot over in Japan in something called Pancrase.
Yep.
Probably not, if you're not familiar with that, that was old school. That's where Boss Rutan started out, Ken Shamrock, Guy Metzger, all those guys. I mean, they were really good back in the day. A lot of good fighters went through there. and so I really loved over there. And like I said, UFC back then, I fought for once. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love watching. That's what got me interested in it. But they were a failing organization at the time until Dana White and UFC and Zuffa bought it
Yeah.
and got involved. And then it just totally changed around. That's when I was like, I want to get back in this organization because they're doing great things. But even if you were in the UFC when I was in the UFC, the UFC put on about 5, 7 fights a year. So you couldn't just fight there. I mean, I remember one time I fought in UFC 45, and then, I fought in UFC 47, and I had a fight in between there as just some other organization. So you didn't fight if you had to fight in other organizations. All the fighters did it. I mean, unless you were the title holder, you pretty much fought in other organizations all the time. So that's where I fought in Cage Rage. I really liked that over in England. It was still more developing there, so it was just a little bit different. But man, I love traveling. So even with UFC, I get to go to many different countries, and I always a lot of people didn't want to leave home. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'll fight anywhere, dude. I don't mind being the road warrior. Put me anywhere. I'll fight anybody anytime, anywhere. So I love that. Cage Rage was good. WEC. It was so fun to me. That was kind of just a smaller organization at the time, but they had really good lighter guys. Because UFC at the time they didn't even want little guys.
They were more about light heavyweight and heavyweight.
Oh yeah. I remember at one point, Eve Edwards, good dude, buddy of mine, and he was fighting, and he was like, well, he's kind of our champ, but we don't really have a title holder. So I was like, what? So they just didn't they treated 155 back then like 125 now. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, they didn't really care for it.
Didn't really care. And then they started saying, hey, people like this WEC, and had really good 155 pounders, good 45 pounders. So then they go, maybe we're trying to put on more fights. We need more fighters. And then they expanded and bought WEC. But that was weird for me when they did that, because WEC, it had a lot of good fighters. Don't get me wrong, obviously, but it was in Lemoore, California, just in a small little place.
You're right.
It was hilarious, man. I used to go over there and we'd have fun, man. I enjoyed going over there. But they always treated you well. Like I said, the people at Cage Rage treat you well. I mean, most of the people, you're dealing with, I thought were pretty good. I mean, not like when you deal with some people like King of the Cage or something like those were kind of a little different. Hook and Shoot was another really good organization back in the day, which was amazing to me because it was in Evansville, Indiana, which is like about 3.5 hours away from me, some little tiny city, but just it was cool. I enjoyed there was something about going to these smaller organizations that as I got past the UFC, and even now I look back on, those were the fun trips. You know what I mean? Like the UFC had this build up, and it was like the top of the line, but the other ones were just fun, kind of how the stuff that would go down, and like a lot of it didn't go right. Like you might not get picked up, and you might be sitting at the airport just waiting. You just never knew it was going to happen in these other places. And there'd be all these other like kind of good fighters, but some of them were definitely the B fighters who were there to get beat. They act the toughest of anybody, and we just kind of laugh like, I mean, this dude's talking how big and bad he is on watching him fight. He looks like he's never fought before. Just so funny how this kind of plays out.
Nice. And again, like you said, you love traveling. You love traveling. You picked anywhere you would fight. So how'd you do when you went to you went to England, right? Then you fought Paul Taylor. I remember that.
Yeah.
Fight. It was a hell of
that was a great fight. That was a fun one. I thought he was lived 11 miles from the venue. So I remember, as a matter of fact, I was there and we were getting ready to do the weigh-ins, and they give everybody like 4 tickets. You get your money and your 4 tickets. And I remember I was in line with the guy and I'm talking to him. He seemed like a nice guy. I'm like, hey man, I don't have anybody coming. Do you want these tickets? And he's like, really? I'm like, what am I going to do with them, man? Sell them now. So I gave him the tickets so he could give to some people. Just because you're fighting somebody doesn't mean you have to be an asshole and not like him. So, and he was a really good dude, and that was a really fun fight. We kind of beat each other up pretty good. I liked it.
Yeah, you guys went toe to toe for a while and stuff, and that's. I mean, again, you had some great battles. I mean, you fought some, also some UFC veterans and legends. I mean, you fought Matt Serra before, Matt Hughes, Josh Koscheck. So you went through a who's who on your resume, man, and that's pretty cool. And I remember watching, was it The Ultimate Fighter, The Comeback? Was that where you were on that season, correct? How was that? Because I did have some guy on, a gentleman on, Grant, Matos. He was actually he was in Survivor season 19, the Redemption Island, and he was talking to me about how the show was completely different on TV compared to actually when they were filming it. So how was that experience, especially having a camera and stuff?
Well, you get used to that pretty quick. Luckily, we were all veterans, so you'd been around, did some media stuff. So I didn't think it was as tough for us as it was for some of the other guys who've never been around it. But to be honest with you, I absolutely loved it. Like you've said a few times, I was a fireman the whole time I was training.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I've had 4 kids, so really, I never had time to just dedicate my life to train all the time. That was the only time in my fight career where I got to train like that. I trained twice a day, 7 days a week. We had great training partners, great coach. Randy Couture was one of the guys there, George St. Pierre, and then just all these other really good fighters. So I got great training, and I did not care at all about not having TV, and I didn't care about not having my phone. People were like, oh, I don't want my phone. I was like, dude, who cares? I remember me and Matt Sarah would just laugh. We'd be like, man, these people are stupid. Who gets to train like this every day? Matt had to run businesses. A lot of people, back then fighters weren't making, millions and millions of dollars. So everybody had to have other jobs or do something, even if it was just training people. But it wasn't like it is now. So to get that opportunity, I loved it, man. And I would do it again. Now, was it a little bit different when they actually aired it? Yeah. One thing I noticed is they might put something happen on right now, and then it really happened 2 weeks ago, and they put it on the same episode. So you could tell. Sometimes you can tell if you look at somebody had different facial hair and different hair length. If you don't pay attention, you don't notice that stuff. You're like, oh, but they would definitely change stuff around to add to their story and make. At the end of the day, it's about entertainment, and if nobody's watching it, it doesn't matter what they show. So you have to get people to want to watch it, and that's their job to edit that. You know what I mean? People get upset about that, but that's a reality, man. I'm a realist.
That's awesome, man. Again, now it's I forgot how many Ultimate Fighters there are, man. There's Ultimate Fighter Brazil. There's this.
Yeah.
It is blown up the crazy amount.
Well, and people don't realize that. Until that show, this sport was not going to make it. I watched a thing not too long ago. I think it was this 27-minute documentary thing, and Dana White and them talking about buying it for $2 million, putting $9 million in, doing all this stuff, and they're putting on fights. And at this time, I'm not making much money, and so I'm like, I need more, I need this, I need that, and I guess I didn't realize at that point they were like $44 million in debt, and the Fertittas came back today and was like, look, we can't do this anymore, and they're like, well, he asked how much they could sell it for, and Dana calls around, he's like, maybe like $8 or $9 million, and they were just like, well, let's talk about it, and then eventually said, let's just keep going, and they got the Ultimate Fighter, and that's really the turning point. So and didn't you sell it for $4.2 billion or something?
Oh, 4.8. Yeah, it was something ridiculous.
Something like that. So, little things had to happen, and getting mainstream acceptance had to happen, and people had to see the fighters and what they go through and their characters, and that really helped turn the sport around. Because, man, I'm telling you, if you talk to people back in 2003 and you told them you fought in a cage, they were just like, and they just get on the other side of the street or be like, what? They just didn't want to deal with you at that point. So
that's why
perceptions changed since then, which is great because it was not good for a long time.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And again, that show has blown up. The sport has blown up. I remember when UFC would only have just one pay-per-view a month. It was just once a month. I remember.
Less than that, man. I remember, it'd be about once every 2 months, and at one point we went to my buddy's house to get it, and somehow the pay-per-views we're not carrying it anymore, and we're just sitting in his house like, well, now what do we do? That was when before Zuffa and them got it, so that's when they called it a blood sport, and you could still do a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of the headbutts, kind of. That was also funny back in the day when I would fight. Back in the 90s or early 2000s, you'd show up at the venue and you talk to promoters. You'd be like, question, what are the rules here? And they'd be like, over there talking, no headbutts. You can kick a guy in the head on the ground. It was just kind of like, you didn't know till you got there. And that was hilarious, man.
Wow.
It was funny just trying to figure it out because you'd have to adjust your game. Okay, no kicking the head on the ground or no headbutts or whatever. But sometimes you did have headbutts. It was just weird stuff. I actually like less rules more than more, because to me, less rules,
it's easier.
It makes well, not only that, but it makes you react more. Like, say, if I can leave the head on the ground and I get you on the ground, you better not lay there. You better start scrambling and move, or even if we're right here, I can start throwing headbutts. You have to turn, and it opens up more chokeholds. It opens up more things. So it's just more of a pure form of fighting. And that guy, he'll figure it out, or he'll get cut open. He won't be there. So, like, yeah, I mean, when I was around back then, I never got any fight stopped because I was busted open, and you were allowed to headbutt. So you just figure out how to work around it. But I understand a lot of people would get cut open, and it is what it is.
Definitely. Again, your whole fight career, like I said before, never got knocked out and stuff, which is amazing. Especially now you see fighters that are still trying to. They're a little bit past their prime, and they're still trying to do it, and then they end up getting hurt. Unfortunately, we see it with a lot of fighters. Unfortunately, I mean, it sucks. I mean, I remember when Randy Couture was getting knocked out, when Chuck Liddell was getting knocked out and stuff, and you're just like,
Matt Hughes,
Matt Hughes.
Well,
towards that
and
end.
that's the thing is the problem with it was these guys who were so good and so dominant for so long were there before the money came. So all of a sudden, they're still hanging on when they're like 40, and it's like they were good from the time they were 29 to like 38. They had a great run of it, but then it's like, but they didn't cash in as much. So now it's like I got to keep doing this, and kind of sucks, and as a fighter, they know how to work hard, they know everything, but all of a sudden you slow down just that much and it totally changes everything, So I think people start getting hit, and once people with that button kind of gets bigger, then you start getting knocked out more often. And luckily for me, I was able to, kind of go out when I was still okay, even though I don't know what it is, if I'm just lucky, genetically or what, but I mean, even when I was training for my bare knuckle and doing whatever, like I still never, I trained a lot. I never got knocked down in the gym, and I'm pretty fortunate. But I mean, one thing I was taught and learned, I work a lot on defense. So, like I roll with a lot of punches. I try to take square shots. So I've seen a lot of people who fought for a lot less time than me who don't talk right and sound funny. I'm like, Jesus, what happened to that guy? But you have to be smart out there, and that just comes by round after round after round, and learning when you're in there how to not take clean punches, because there's one thing just to keep going harder and harder, but I mean, a lot of guys I've seen do that, and they just beat each other up, and they never even make great pros because they beat each other too much early. And that's not the goal. The goal isn't to go in there and be the toughest guy in the gym. The goal is to go in there and learn how to fight and succeed when a real fight happens. So
definitely. Again, who do you like right now as a fighter? I like one of the fighters that kind of pops up that he's up and coming, and he's pretty much made a good name for himself. Is Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley, I like him a lot. I think he has he just has a good base on everything, from stand up to the ground game. I like him.
Sure.
Like, by any chance?
What's funny is, like, right now, I know he just fought and I know he just lost, but I've been kind of a big fan of Masvidal right now, just because that guy, he's like a throwback. I get because he's been fighting for so long, but he's still not that old. I mean, but he's like he fights anybody, anywhere, anytime. It's not all about necessarily win or losing, but he's put on a hell of a good streak right now. I know that sucks. He lost the other night, but he took the fight on 6 days' notice and had to lose 20-something pounds. So I know it's going to be tough, but I mean, that kind of style, it appears right now, is pretty much everybody's kryptonite, but it's not really aesthetically pleasing or conducive to watch. You know what I mean? So here's the problem they're going to get with that is, what are they going to do as far as, not many people, if he's a headline, not many people are going to buy that pay-per-view anymore. You know what I mean? Because, not Masvidal I'm talking about
about Usman, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, does he win? Absolutely. Is it smart? Absolutely. Is it entertaining? Not to me. I mean, he's like pushing the guy in the fence and hitting him in the body until he gets tired. I mean, there's something to be said for it. I'm not going to say, but I mean, I would rather see Masvidal is going to go in there and be a dynamic striker and try and do a lot of things. But it is what it is. Like I've been a big fan of they're kind of out right now. I'd say like a Matt Brown and a Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I'm kind of like the guys who just come to fight no matter what every time. Those are the guys I love to watch fight. I don't care how great you are. If it's boring, I don't really want to see it that much.
Definitely.
So,
I see like Usman's almost style is very similar to Tyson Woodley, as he's a wrestler. And again, look what happened with him. Not a lot of people liked watching his fights because he would take you down, kind of suffocate you a little bit. Even didn't have that.
Even like when he'd fight a great jiu-jitsu guy, he would just not even throw a lot of punches. He would just not let you take him down. He'd just do enough to like control the fight and win. But it wasn't.
Nothing.
No, I don't want to watch that for 25 minutes. You know, I just don't want to. So, and that's where I come back once again to the bare knuckle. These people don't know it's an athletic contest. It's still a fight to them, you know, and that's kind of what people loved, I think, a lot of UFC. And that's what a lot of people like about some of those fighters who just go out there and throw it down, put it on the line and fight. And, you know, if you're not like that, I get it. You know, it's smarter to be the way you are. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's just like when I'm a big boxing fan. Like I'd watch Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward if they fought.
Oh yeah,
100 times.
Wars.
You know what I mean? Because they weren't the best two guys in their weight class. But they were the most entertaining. You know, so I mean, I'd rather watch. I want to be entertained when I'm doing this. Not like I'm not a big Floyd Mayweather fan. I know he's slick and I know he can't be hit, and there is something to it. But I don't want to. I'm not paying $100 to watch on pay-per-view. I'm just not doing it.
Definitely.
So, I don't know.
So talking about fights, what was your most memorable fight? Where's the fight that you remember now? You look back in your career and be like, man, this was a blast. This fight was, was like the highlight of your career or something like that.
I could think of two right off. I mean, there was a lot of them actually. I had a lot of good ones, but two that really stand out in my head right now are like UFC 45 when I fought Robbie Lawler, because at that point they thought of me as. I mean, like the people said, like 95% of the people said that Robbie Lawler was going to probably knock me out. You know, I was like, all right, cool. And like nobody gave me a chance. They thought Robbie was this great, guy, and I was just this chump. And like, all right, cool. We'll see. Oh, he thinks he's a pro boxer. He's going to come in. I was like, all right, we'll see what happens. And then that was just a fight where we just started hitting each other and clubbing each other. And that was definitely one where like I couldn't have cared less if there was, a million people watching or if it's just me and him in the gym, Mm-hmm. We were going to just do what we were going to do. And I was having a lot of fun there, and everything else was drowned out. There was no crowd, and we were just, me and him were who's going to be more dominant. I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. You're going to hit me, and we're going to see who's better. And I thought it was a very good fight, a lot of fun. And afterwards, I think it definitely changed the way people looked at me. So I could definitely say that was a fun one where I lost myself in the fight and just had a fun time. And besides that, I would say my last fight when I fought Dan Hardy was very memorable.
Dan Hardy, that was a good one. That was the last one too.
Yeah, I kind of decided I handed Dana White my resignation, a thank you letter for what he did for me and my family, at the weigh-ins. And then so I knew it was my last fight. You really want to win, but you don't know how it's going to go. So then, but fighting that one, everybody had before was told me, oh, you better take him down. You better take him down. He's good on his feet. And I remember I was pissed. I was like, what am I? Am I no good? I mean, I don't have to take anybody down. People need to take me down to beat me. So I was like, I'm not trying to take this guy down. And like I said, this is my last fight. I'm going to go out how I want. So I was involved with a good fight with him, and I felt like I was winning. And then with about a minute left, he got desperate and tried to take me down, and I submitted him. So it was good because I got win the fight of the night, the sub of the night, and then got to ride off in the sunset happily.
So, and that's a good thing. That's where a lot of people want to see, fighters do, especially, with a lot of fighters going down, especially the last fight getting knocked out or something like that. You don't want to see that, especially if someone you invested time watching and stuff. I've watched you. I mean, I'm a big fan. So just seeing you happy and going off like that, and still, again, it was a beautiful thing because again, you wanted to be there for your kids. You're like, what? This is time for my kids. And that's beautiful, man. And that's good that you still have that time.
Well, I mean, I had kids pretty young, so my kids were getting older by that time. I had some kids just starting high school. I'm like, man, I'm not going to any basketball games or any gymnastics practices, and I'm never around. I was working, 50 hours a week and trying to train full time and trying to do appearances for the UFC, just everything. I was like, something had to give, and usually that was my time with my kids. So I just started feeling really guilty, and I was like, man, it's time. It's been a good run, and I didn't really know that 2 days after I retired, they were going to sign a deal with Fox. That would have been nice to know. But tell me, we're going to make a lot more money? Yeah, maybe I should.
But I mean, hey, that's how it goes. But again, I'm glad that everything worked out for you. Now let's talk a little bit before, I know you're busy and you have to go and stuff. The bare knuckle fighting.
Oh yeah.
You're undefeated in that, by the way, right?
I had three fights. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean that right there. I watched some of it. I saw Chris Lieben fight. There was a bunch of UFC
Yeah.
fighters that went in there. Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch of them. How was your take, and why did you do it by any chance? Did you just want to do like, hey, let me try it out, or like you were saying?
Well, you know, when I was boxing, I always wanted to keep boxing. But when I signed my UFC contract, they're like, no boxing. Like, damn, all right, whatever. I'll do what I have to do. So I didn't get to. I got to have my good Dan Hardy going away fight. I never had that for boxing. So I was like, man, I'd like to do more. And then I remember I was watching my buddy Joe Riggs on Facebook, and somebody like, Joe Riggs fights bare knuckle. I'm like, what's wrong with Joe? Why do you do this? What's wrong with my watch? And about halfway through the fight, I go, okay, how do I get a hold of these guys? I kind of it's like I feel like as a combative athlete, I have to try it. You know what I mean? It's like when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, this is something I'd like to do. So I got a hold of people in England, and they were like, absolutely, we'd love to have you. So they had me come over and do a fight, and it was cool, and I loved it. And then I came back to the States, and I was like, hey, I talked to the commission in Indiana, and I was like, hey, can we get, you know, this is why this is safer than UFC or boxing. They were like, yeah, no, we're not. They said, Chris, Indiana's not going to be the first state to do anything. Don't even ask for it. So I was like, we're done. Then a couple of months later, they called me and said, we got one in Wyoming. Do you want to do it? And I wanted to so bad, but that was my daughter's wedding day. So I said, look, I can't do the first one. I promise I'll do the second one. They go, okay. So they had me do the second one down in Mississippi, and then got to fight in Mexico. And then since then I've transitioned. I had like wrist surgery after that because I just messed up my hands for years. So and at 45, I'm like, man, I can't keep coming back and doing my wrist is still not 100%. I'm doing commentary for him now, so I enjoy that. But man, it is still a lot of fun. It's like I'm trying to say like boxing, not on steroids, like boxing like amplified, because I remember that. I'll never forget when I went over to England and fought. This dude came at me, and I remember I thought, okay, I'm going to time this uppercut. And as soon as he reared back to throw this big overhand right, I was taking uppercut. But then another thing thought, if you miss, he's knocking you out. You know, it's just like, this is different. You know what I mean? So I felt naked with no gloves on. It was weird, you know. So then I had to adjust. It took me a minute to get my timing down and the distancing different. So it's a good hybrid between boxing and MMA. It really is, because it's just a little bit different, and it's really fun to watch, and it's fun to be part of. I'm glad I'm doing it, man. I can't wait to the next fight.
Definitely. Again, those are really exciting to watch and stuff, because you know exactly what you're getting in for. They're not just gonna kind of like hug each other, this and that. They're going to kill, and that's it. So
and Dave Feldman really, he pushes for good, exciting fights, you know, and he does not like it. They're 5 2-minute rounds, and he wants 2-minute rounds because he wants you to go hard the whole time. You know, there's not a lot of fake, and there's not a lot of just like feeling the guy out. It's like, man, you go knock that guy's head off, and he'll try and knock yours off, and whoever wins. You know, it's great.
Definitely. And again, I do appreciate you spending some time talking about your career. I mean, you had a stellar career. You are a legend. You're a veteran. I mean, I wish you nothing but happiness, man. You're when watching you in the cage, you're awesome. I still watch your fights, and thank you for everything, buddy. All right.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching and understanding what I was trying to do. Go out there and just, nothing made me happier than to win like a fight of the night, or to, be one of the people who say, man, like a fan favorite, because at the end of the day, this is about one thing and one thing only: entertaining people, and I like entertaining people. I like it when people, my goal was always to say, if somebody saw I was going to be on the card, to be like, I'm getting the pay-per-view, because I know there's going to be one good fight. No matter what, something good's going to happen, at least, because you're not going to get a bad card the whole card. Like, I want people to get their money's worth, and I want to help do it. So
definitely.
It makes me feel good when you say stuff like that. Thank you.
No problem, man. And again, God bless, and thank you for coming on again.
No problem, brother.
Thank you.